I would relay to you all the events of the first day of this water park. The way in which humans screamed and shrieked, and the running of small children, their slapping feet striking hard ground, the noise of splashes as they jumped into the various pools. It was quite chaotic, and I found myself feeling a little anxious. My tail stiffened, and I felt the need to step closer to my host family. The noise of rushing and crashing water, the shouting of vendors and smell of cooked and cooking meat, and the wild array of colors. It is fair to say I was overstimulated. Dlameses seek familiarity when overstimulated or distressed, and the only familiar thing I had was my host family. I told myself again and again, settle down, this is for science. This is supposed to be how humans have fun. You went through transit, you drank in a human bar. This should be nothing. But the noise, it was getting to me. And the crowd. At least at the bar on the ship I had the familiarity of my fellow students, my professor, and maybe the alcohol helped a lot. And I wondered if anyone else was going to growl at me. I didn't like being growled at. As Dlameses go, I won't pretend I'm the strongest sort. I am and always have been only interested in what I could learn. The more adventurous ones might have been fine where I was, but amidst the confusion and wild back and forth, all I wanted was to leave. My hearts began to pound, and it all began to get to me, to leave and be somewhere more calming. "Bailey, are you okay?" Rebecca asked me. She noticed first. Though I recognized the concern on William's face, he didn't ask, or at least he didn't get the chance to. Here again we come to a unique facet of human culture, at least this human culture. The male often is more concerned with his appearance and reputation than his well-being, and because of this priority, he puts forth the same thing for his friends. Strange as it may seem, a male in my observation will seldom ask in a public setting if his male companion is coping well with something going on. If he asks, it will be in private where there is no risk of public shaming. The care expression from the human male is more often distract first, and then deal with it where others cannot see. By contrast, Rebecca immediately asked if I was all right. While the sexes are equally gifted in recognizing signs of distress in others, each approached it in a different fashion with different priorities in mind. Her concern was for my immediate mental well-being, and so she asked about it, a stark contrast to William's more quiet thoughts about my public appearance. I think I need to be elsewhere. I told them, and tried to keep from looking left and right, from watching all the wild noise making people, but the longer I stood there, the worse I felt. I just had to leave. I think I forgot something back at the house. Rebecca, why don't you stay and let Michael play in the kiddie area, and then I'll pick you up later? William suggested, and then turning his attention to me, he had notably tried not to look at me directly when my stress was elevated, he added, "Bailey, why don't you come with me and give me a hand? We can come back tomorrow. It's a Sunday, and it'll be a lot less busy in the early part of the day before it warms up." Rebecca quickly agreed and suggested, "Why not stop by the store, pick up some snacks or something that we could have, and we'll watch something together. The Next Night Stays Fateful series premieres today. Sure, it's the 30th spin-off or reboot, but I still want to see it." Sure, come on, Bailey. Let's head to the car." William tapped me on the shoulder with his hand, and we all parted ways. It is worth mentioning here that William didn't run to the car, nor did he jog. The human is not the fastest creature in nature, one of the most enduring, but far from the fastest. William's stride was swift, long, and steady. He was engaged in what they call speed walking. He was moving with haste at my side to get me out of there, but without drawing attention to us. I kept up with him easily, and I wasn't about to complain about leaving early, even if earlier did mean leaving only 5 minutes after arrival. William didn't demand an apology for the wasted trip, or the time spent getting ready. I admit I expected at least some anger directed at me since they took the trouble to take me where I expressly asked to go. But no. He stopped the car at the grocery store, did as his wife suggested, and before I knew it we were home. Never once did he address my panic. He quietly accepted my distress and brought me back home. A Zorpaniki, on detecting weakness in one of its own, would be expected to exploit that weakness, to degrade that vulnerability, and draw the broken one into its web of subordinates that will serve it for life. A Fangi would extort silence for secrecy. Even my own species, we are less likely to respond favorably to one of our own who displays weakness of any kind, though admittedly our response tends toward a positive intent of toughening up the weak spot. Somehow the mere fact that my distress was accepted, responded to, and treated as if it were not the weakness that I felt it to be, made me feel less weak than I felt only minutes before. When we returned to the house, we entered the door. William went in ahead. His stride had slowed considerably from when he walked me out of the water park, and my tail had ceased to curl. I won't deny being relieved I was gone from there, but I still felt uneasy. All the video footage of human entertainment, human reality television, human interviews and histories, none of it prepared me for the real reality of a quiet human after an act of urgently needed generosity of spirit. When we went into the house, he walked through the library, into the dining area, and looked up the stairs. From there, he shouted, "Fove, Bailey and I are back early. Do you want anything?" "Hey, Dad!" Her voice came down from well out of view. "No, I'm okay. I ate already. How come you guys are back early?" She shouted to us without descending the stairs. I braced myself for the truth. "Nothing big. Your mother and Michael stayed. I'll grab them later. I had some things to pick up is all." William shouted his lie up to his daughter, and I answered with a quiet, "Thank you." I then went down to my room to write about these events in my notes. It's telling that William chose to lie about why we left. Lies are very rare among intelligent species. It is telling that we see it so rarely, and that when we do, it is always among the more social species. The more social a species is, the more frequently they are dishonest. Some species have used this to denigrate humankind, and I will admit I at one point shared this shameful belief that you can never trust a human. However, in studying other species, and finding this trend of antisocial honesty and pro-social dishonesty, I came to several key conclusions that crystallized to certainty among my host family. The less social species communicate rarely, there is little to be gained by deception, and truth tends to have a greater survival value for both, so the need to deceive never evolved. These species found it a struggle to deal with races in the wider galaxy, and even explaining a fiction to them was a chore that took several decades. But as species grew more social, lies were not just a way to gain an edge, they were a conflict lubricant. William's lie for me buried my shame and made me more comfortable, not only with him, but with my own anxiety in general. A lie, if benign, can serve a social good, and actually help to heal an individual's pain, and keep their sense of place within the group, enhancing their overall happiness, and making them far more effective group participants. I realize my detractors will say that humans deceive each other for malice and cruelty, for power and lust, to steal and destroy. And I will acknowledge that this is true. Even humans will acknowledge the truth of this statement, but such lies are comparatively uncommon. Far more common are those of the sort William told, leaving me to have control over when I acknowledge openly that today's attempt had been too much. Over my time with the Walkers, I observed countless little lies that spared feelings from hurt and each other from shame or embarrassment. As the most social intelligent species in the galaxy, humans have far more occasions where conflict might arise, where they could speak a hurtful truth that offers nothing but pain and will make things worse, or where they could offer comfort and security through a small and harmless deception. A child's drawing is awful? Don't say it is awful. Focus on the positive, so that they are encouraged to refine it further. A hard day is spent on a difficult meal, and the execution is off. They might focus on favorable words of encouragement or disguise that they haven't eaten as much, or if it is inedible, beg off of it by pretending illness. The human drive to lie is inexorably bound to its desire to protect those they care for. In a strange way, William's willingness to make up an excuse for me, rather than risk shaming me to his daughter, made me feel more at home than any of the things they'd done so far. I still had a lot to learn, but with only 2 days into a 50-year stay, I felt I was making excellent progress. They left me to work alone in my private room for the rest of the day. I was grateful for that. I took copious notes, the link to which is found at the back of this text for those curious about details I have left out here for brevity. It was a relief to work privately after having struggled with the crowd. There is a tranquility to private academic work, as I'm sure my fellows here at university would agree, and it did wonders for settling my anxious mind. It was a few hours into my work when I had a knock at my door. I sat up from my workspace and said, "Come in, Fove." "How did you know it was me?" she asked when the door opened. Her long brown hair was bound into knots and hung over the front of her shoulder. Human hair is a remarkable thing, surprisingly strong. Humans have even used this as a natural and silent murder weapon in the past. They would take cut lengths of hair, loop it over the throat, and choke their victim to death. But beyond this, the human vanity over hair has led to all kinds of interesting treatments, including deliberately tying it into knots to keep it more orderly. Somehow. "I could smell you," I said matter-of-factly, and the human girl stopped dead, lifted her left arm, took a sniff beneath it, then lifted her right arm and sniffed beneath it in turn. "I took a shower," she said and crossed her arms. Her expression was thin-lipped, and her brown eyes narrowed at me. I'd messed up. I knew she was miffed. I reacted as fast as I could and tapped the end of my snout. I have a better nose than humans, and a Dlamisa never forgets a smell. "Oh." She snapped her fingers and brightened up. "I thought you meant I stink." I was about to get offended. "Technically, everything stinks, doesn't it? A stink is just a strong smell, and everything, to me at least, has a strong smell," I replied, and pushed aside the data pad I was entering my observations into. She looked away and began tapping her foot. Her hands rested on her hips, and she said, "Technically, maybe, but, it's bad form to tell a girl she stinks. If it isn't a bad smell, you could at least say it is fragrant." "I can see how you take after your father," I answered, and she gave a little nod. She didn't say it, but I could see that pleased her, and I added, "Fine. I knew it was you because I recognized your pleasant fragrance." "Better," she said with a satisfied nod, and relaxed her arms before looking at me again and asking, "How would you like to get out for a little while? Dad went to pick up Mom, and he'll probably stop to pick up something from a restaurant to go. Mom likes to do that, and he'll usually give her what she wants if it isn't too much, so we probably have an hour or two before they get back." My tail drooped. I'm a little bit peopled out right now. Plus, I really should finish putting in my observations. I stopped when she pouted a little. A human pout is compelling. Their lips turn down just a little and their eyes get wide. It is especially effective when it comes to young girls. According to my observations of their media, fathers can seldom resist it when their daughters pout. The desire to make each other happy drives a great deal of human behavior. There are worse motivations, but notably, I was affected. There shouldn't be many people, if any. I wanted to go to the park. It's a short walk from the house, and it might help you relax. She replied to me and held eye contact the entire time. The promise of a lack of people was appealing, and the day was a nice one. "You know what? Maybe it is a good idea to take a break," I said and rose to my feet. Her face lit up and I followed her toward the basement exit. The room I was given was part of a larger area. A lot of it was storage. Humans are hoarders compared to most races, and to be frank, a lot of dust was down there. Old boxes and other things were plentiful. But it did have a separate bathroom and shower, a place I could call my own, even if it wasn't perfect, and it had its own entry and exit to ensure I was able to come and go as I pleased. We left and began to walk down the street when after only a few minutes Fauve said to me, "I usually either go alone or with my dad to the park. I don't have a lot of friends and don't really want them either. I'm not really a people person." "So why invite me?" I asked, genuinely curious and surprised by the blunt nature of this girl. I'm sure I have said it before, but I must add again. The diversity of human personality is wild, and some, like her, could have passed for another race entirely if we went only by their personalities. She could have passed for a Dlamisa with ease if that was her attitude. She shrugged. "A whim. You're going to be living with us. I figured I should at least try to get to know you. And how often does someone get the chance to talk to a real live alien outside of datacom chats between systems?" "So this is for science?" I asked, and she seemed to take that to be a joke as she gave me a casual punch on the shoulder. "You can call it that. I do want to satisfy my curiosity, though," she answered, and while I thought her answer was strange, I didn't get a chance to get clarification as she began peppering me with more questions about myself and my life and my homeworld. The capacity for curiosity in this species was proving to be one of my favorite things, and she let me talk all the way to the park. The park she mentioned took about 15 of their minutes to walk to, including a long walk down a winding slope. When we reached the bottom, I found that the park was cut into pieces by a winding and slow-moving stream. It wasn't deep enough for me to comfortably call it a river, nor was it especially wide. But it was impressive in its own way. The babbling water cut its way through grass and stone. I saw a fish leap from the water and splash into a spot deeper than the one it left. Insects buzzed around the edge in tiny swarms, and a small playground meant for human children, including a wobbly bridge and some swinging seats, sat waiting for use. The play area was rubberized to protect children from injury, and this was my chance to ask something that bothered me, something I'd seen in older human films but changed in later ones. I pointed to the play area and said, "In the old films, there were just a bunch of rocks where your young would land if they fell. But here, and in later movies, it transitioned to these soft rubber surfaces. How come?" I didn't really expect Fauve to know the answer, but then, maybe I should have, given her innate and seemingly boundless curiosity and pushiness when it came to wanting answers. "Easy, rocks hurt, so they replaced it with rubber," she replied. "But the older ones had rocks, so why—" I scratched my head, and Fauve cocked her head at me just as mine cocked at her. "Because if you want things to suck for your kids because it sucked for you, you're a shit parent and shouldn't have kids. That's how my dad put it. He says stuff like that a lot. Don't get him started talking about old people. He doesn't like people who don't like change, let alone people who don't like improvement." Fauve chortled a little at that, and I gathered it was an old rant I was hearing about. Before I could ask more, again the girl got ahead of me and pulled out a ball from the pouch she wore behind her back. She held it up so I could clearly see it, turned so that she was to my side, and threw it as hard as she could over the grass. I have no idea why I chased it. What kind of buried instincts within my brain compelled me to go after that little green round ball must have been buried deep in my subconscious. But I ran. I locked my forearms and fell to all fours, going as fast as I could as it bounced farther and farther away. And then drew closer and closer as it lost momentum and I picked up speed. Then I had it. I caught it in my jaws, clamped down on it, and when the ball let out a scream like squeak, I was thrilled. All three of my hearts were beating at once and going faster than I'd ever felt. I relaxed and squeezed my jaw again and again, again and again, again and again, listening to that screaming noise it made until I came to my senses and realized what I'd done. I relaxed my arms and stood up on two legs, then dropped the ball into my hand and walked back over to Fauve. She held out her hand for the ball, and I returned it, albeit with some reluctance. Why was I reluctant? Why did I not want to give it back? Why did I give it back if not for her to throw it again? 1,000 questions ran through my head, not the least of which was why in the galaxy's nebula did she throw it? And did she expect I would chase it down? I was halfway toward it for the second time before I realized I'd moved, and even when I realized I was running on all fours, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop because I didn't want to, and I didn't want to because I was having fun, so I went with it. Questions could wait. I caught it, returned it to her, and she threw it again. I caught it, returned it to her, and she threw it again. Once she threw the ball so that it went into the water. I never hesitated. I splashed in, feeling the cool crystalline droplets spatter over my red and black fur, feeling the wind swishing over my body. I didn't even care that the ball was wet when I grabbed and squeezed it in my jaw. I couldn't tell you how many times I chased it, and Fauve did not keep count. All I knew was that it was many, a very great many. It went on until I was huffing and puffing so much and so hard that if I'd been close to the house I might have blown it down. It was only when I gave the ball back to her and she put it away in the little pack she wore on her back that I asked her the meaning of her actions. "I just wondered how much you had in common with dogs. This seemed like a good way to find out." Fauve replied, and when she looked up at me she said, "And I thought we might have some fun." I don't know why, but I crouched down like I had for Michael at the transport station, and I let her scratch behind my ears and pat my head. I remembered what my professor said. Humans are the only species with found families, and are aggressively protective of them. This includes their found parents, siblings, children, and much, much more. If you find a human spending more time with you and initiating physical contact, you should assume that you have been adopted. If he was right, then it looked like I'd found myself another human, and it seemed like my tail certainly agreed, since it would not stop wagging any more than I could stop panting. "So, you want to head back?" she asked. "Mom and Dad will probably be home soon if they're not already." She pulled out her phone from her pocket. Perhaps I should add here that Fauve did not dress in the same fashion as her mother, at least not that I'd seen yet. She wore cut-off jeans with pockets and carried no purse. She was, if anything, dressed closer to her father. She checked her phone and found nothing before storing it away, and I replied that yes, we should go ahead and head back. I did pause and look around the park, though. There was a winding dirt trail just on the other side of the creek, and I wanted to see where it led. The strange thing about humans is that they will radically modify their environments and then seek out unmodified or far less modified environments in pursuit of pleasure, leaving behind the things they made that are presumably also made for their comfort and enjoyment. If it does not make sense to you, believe me, you are not alone.